Some women know how to spot opportunity when it walks through the door. Me, I've always been good at reading the room, understanding what people need to hear. When you're smart about it, you can position yourself exactly where you need to be when the right moment comes. I'm Tanisha, 45, and I've been married to Hunter for 14 years. Hunter's one of those guys who thinks working with his hands makes him profound, always coming home with dirt under his fingernails, talking about grain patterns in wood like it's poetry. He drives this ancient pickup truck that sounds like it's dying every time he starts it, but he refuses to replace it because it still runs. That's Hunter in a nutshell. Functional. Predictable. Completely satisfied with mediocre. The call came on a Tuesday morning in February. Hunter's Uncle Raymond had died, left him everything. $340,000. Just sitting there waiting to become ours. I watched Hunter's face when he got the news, saw him trying to process having that kind of money. He kept saying things like, Uncle Raymond always believed in hard work and I should use this responsibly. I nodded and made supportive wife sounds. But inside I was already calculating. That money changed something in me. Suddenly, I started noticing things about Hunter I'd been ignoring for years. The way he chewed his food. How he'd fall asleep watching those boring home improvement shows. The fact that he thought a nice dinner out meant the chain restaurant with the unlimited breadsticks. Here we had enough money to actually live, and he wanted to put it in savings accounts and talk to financial advisors. I started being nicer to him, more interested in our future together. Maybe we could look at vacation homes. I'd suggest over dinner. Or that kitchen renovation you mentioned. Hunter would light up, start sketching plans on napkins. Talking about crown molding and cabinet hardware. I'd smile and nod. Already planning how I'd redecorate once I got my half. The book club was Patricia's idea. Hunter's mom thought I needed more social outlets. Perfect cover. Really, every Wednesday night, I'd tell Hunter I was discussing literature with the neighborhood wives, when really I was sitting in coffee shops or driving around, thinking about my options. The group was real enough. I showed up the first few times, bought the books, played the part, but mostly it gave me freedom to move around without Hunter asking questions. That's when I started really talking to Evan. Hunter's younger brother had always been different, more sensitive, more aware of emotional undercurrents. Where Hunter saw everything in black and white, Evan understood nuance. He'd been single for 2 years after his last girlfriend moved to Atlanta for work, and I could see the loneliness in him during family dinners. While Hunter dominated conversations with job site stories, Evan would ask me about my day, actually listen to my answers. It started innocently enough. How are you doing? Tanisha. Really doing? He asked one Sunday after dinner, while Hunter was outside looking at Patricia's fence that needed repair. Something in his voice made me pause, made me really look at him. Evan had these deep brown eyes that seemed to see right through you, and when he focused on me like that, I felt seen in a way I hadn't in years. Sometimes I wonder if Hunter and I are just going through the motions. I admitted it wasn't entirely a lie. We had fallen into routines, predictable patterns, but saying it out loud to Evan, seeing the concern in his face, made it feel more real somehow. Over the next few weeks, I found myself opening up to Evan more and more. When Hunter would dismiss my ideas about the inheritance money, I'd text Evan about feeling unheard. When Hunter fell asleep during a movie I'd call Evan to talk about it. He was so different from his brother, where Hunter was practical to a fault. Evan was intuitive. Where Hunter assumed everything was fine, Evan asked the deeper questions. You deserve someone who appreciates what you bring to a relationship. Evan told me one evening when I'd called him after Hunter had forgotten about dinner reservations I'd made. Hunter's always been focused on his work. But that doesn't mean you should feel invisible. The first time we met for coffee, I told myself it was just friendship. Evan had suggested it after I'd mentioned feeling isolated, stuck in the same routines day after day. We sat in this little cafe downtown, and for 2 hours I felt like the most interesting person in the world. Evan asked about my dreams, my thoughts on everything from politics to art. When Hunter came home that night and asked about my day, all he wanted to know was whether I'd picked up his dry cleaning. Coffee became a regular thing. Then dinner when Hunter was working late. Evan would choose these intimate little restaurants, places where we could talk without interruption. He'd tell me about his photography hobby, show me pictures he'd taken around the city. I'd share stories about my college years, dreams I'd put aside when I married Hunter. With Evan, I remembered who I used to be before I became someone's wife. The inheritance money sat in our joint account like a constant reminder of possibilities. Hunter had meetings with financial planners, talked about retirement accounts and investment strategies. Meanwhile, I was discovering what it felt like to be truly wanted by someone who saw me as more than just a household manager. When Evan first kissed me, We were in his apartment looking through his photography portfolio. It felt inevitable, like we'd been building toward that moment for months. Afterward, as I drove home to Hunter, I didn't feel guilty. I felt alive in a way I hadn't in years. Hunter was already asleep when I got home, sprawled across the bed in his ratty t-shirt, completely oblivious to the fact that his wife had just discovered what she'd been missing. The affair developed quickly after that. Wednesday book clubs became Wednesday afternoons at Evan's place. Hunter's late work nights became opportunities for longer dinners, deeper conversations. Evan made me feel beautiful, desired, intellectually stimulated. He'd cook for me, actual meals, not just throwing something in the microwave. He'd play music I'd never heard, introduce me to books that made me think. With Hunter, I was a wife who managed schedules and picked up dry cleaning. With Evan, I was a woman worth pursuing. Hunter never suspected anything. He'd come home covered in sawdust, shower, eat whatever I'd thrown together for dinner, and fall asleep watching television. If he noticed I was on my phone more, or that I'd started paying more attention to my appearance, he didn't comment. That was Hunter, as long as his basic needs were met and his routines weren't disrupted. He assumed everything was perfect. But I was getting tired of the deception, tired of pretending to be satisfied with a marriage that felt more like a business partnership. The inheritance money made it possible to imagine a different life. Evan understood me in ways Hunter never had, never would. When I'd complain about Hunter's lack of ambition, Evan would listen and validate my frustrations. When I'd mention feeling trapped, Evan would remind me that I deserved happiness. 6 months into the affair, I made my decision. I was sitting in Evan's apartment on a Wednesday afternoon, watching him edit photographs on his computer, when it hit me, and this was what I wanted. Not just the sex, though that was incredible, but the whole package. Someone who saw me, appreciated me, wanted to build something real with me. Hunter had the money now, but money without passion was just existing, not living. That evening, while Hunter was at some work meeting, I crafted the text message, short, direct, final. I want a divorce. I'm in love with someone else. I've already contacted a lawyer. Please don't make this difficult. I hit send before I could second guess myself. Hunter's response came back within minutes. Okay, send me the papers when they're ready. That was it. No fight. No questions. No attempt to save our marriage. Just acceptance. Part of me was relieved. I'd expected drama, tears, begging, but part of me was also insulted. 14 years together. And he couldn't even be bothered to ask who I was leaving him for. I texted back. I thought you'd at least want to know who. Doesn't matter. But it did matter, because 3 days later everything changed. I was at Evan's place when his phone rang. Hunter's name on the screen. Evan looked at me, conflicted, then answered, "Hey, man, what's up?" I could hear Hunter's voice through the phone, calm and steady. "Keith called me, told me about you and Tanisha." "Wait, Keith. Who was Keith?" I grabbed the phone from Evan. "Hunter, what are you talking about? Who's Keith?" "Your boyfriend's real name." "Did you think I didn't know?" My world tilted. Evan, Keith, whatever his name was, looked at me with something like pity in his eyes. I had to tell him. "Tanisha, we're brothers." I couldn't keep lying. Brothers. Hunter and Keith were brothers. I'd been sleeping with Hunter's brother for 6 months, and somehow Hunter had known. The room started spinning as I tried to process what this meant for my divorce. For the money, for everything I'd planned. "You knew." I managed to ask Hunter through the phone. "I suspected you were cheating." Didn't know it was Keith until he called me just now. But yeah, I figured something was going on. "And you're okay with this?" Hunter actually laughed. "Tanisha, you're leaving me for my brother. Whether I'm okay with it doesn't change anything. You two deserve each other." I hung up, stared at Keith, trying to reconcile this man I'd fallen for with the reality of what I'd done. "Why didn't you tell me you were his brother?" "I thought you knew. You're married to him. How could you not know he had a brother named Keith?" But I hadn't known. In 14 years of marriage, Hunter had mentioned family. Sure, but I'd never paid attention to details like names and relationships. I'd been too focused on my own needs, my own plans. The lawyer I'd contacted was optimistic about the divorce settlement. Inheritance received during marriage was typically considered marital property. Half of that $340,000 would set me up nicely for my new life with Keith. Plus half the house value, spousal support, my car. I'd walk away with enough money to start over properly. Keith seemed excited about our future too. We started making plans. Maybe a small apartment at first, then something bigger, once the settlement came through. He showed me listings online, talked about trips we could take. For the first time in years, I felt like I was moving towards something instead of just existing in place. The divorce papers arrived 2 weeks later, and I filed them immediately. My lawyer walked me through everything: asset division, support calculations, timelines. It all looked straightforward. Hunter would get served. We'd negotiate terms, and within a few months I'd be free with enough money to build the life I actually wanted. Then Hunter's response came back, and everything fell apart. He agreed to the divorce, no contest, but he contested the asset division. According to his filing, the inheritance money was gone, transferred to his mother months before I'd even filed for divorce. Legal transfers? Documented. Provable. Estate planning? His lawyer called it. I called Hunter immediately. What do you mean the money's gone? Gave it to Mom. Estate planning. It's in her name now. You can't do that. That was our money. Actually, it was my inheritance, and I can do whatever I want with my own money. Did it 6 months ago. 6 months ago. Right around the time I'd started the affair with Keith. Had Hunter known? Had he planned this? This is fraud. You hid assets. Legal transfer. Documented. Want to see the paperwork? My lawyer has copies. I hung up and called my lawyer immediately. Vincent reviewed Hunter's response, made some calls, did research. The transfers were legitimate. Gifts to his mother, loans for property refinancing, investment in her business, all legal, all documented, all done months before I'd filed for divorce. Unless you can prove he knew about the divorce beforehand, or that the transfers were made specifically to avoid marital property division. There's not much we can do, Vincent told me. The timing is unfortunate, but not illegal. Keith was waiting for me when I got home from the lawyer's office. What's going on with the money situation? I explained what Hunter had done. Watched Keith's expression change as he processed the implications. So there's no inheritance to split. My lawyer says we can fight it. But it doesn't look good. Keith went quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice had changed. Tanisha, I borrowed money to help with your legal fees. I was expecting to get it back from the settlement. How much money? $15,000. I took it from my retirement account. $15,000. Money he'd given me expecting a return on investment. Just like I'd expected a return on investment from my marriage to Hunter. The irony wasn't lost on me. The next few months were a nightmare of legal battles and financial discovery. Hunter's lawyer produced every document, every receipt, every piece of paper trail showing where the inheritance money had gone. My lawyer fought hard, but the evidence was overwhelming. Hunter had legitimately transferred the money to his mother for legitimate purposes months before any divorce filing. The mediation was brutal. I sat across from Hunter for the first time since I'd left, and he looked different, calmer, somehow, more confident. Like he'd been expecting this all along. We're prepared to offer Mrs. Hayes $45,000 as her share of the house equity. Hunter's lawyer said, plus she keeps her vehicle and personal belongings. That's insulting. Vincent snapped. She's entitled to half of everything, including the inheritance. The inheritance that's been legally transferred to his mother. We've been over this. I stared at Hunter across the table. You planned this. All of it. He met my eyes steadily. I protected myself. That's what you do when you suspect someone's using you. Using him. The word hit me like a slap. Was that what I'd been doing? Using Hunter for financial security while planning my exit strategy, looking back at my behavior over the past months, the sudden interest in vacation plans and renovations right after the inheritance, the way I'd positioned myself to maximize my payout. Maybe he was right. Maybe I had been using him. But that didn't make what he'd done fair. That money could have been our fresh start. Keith's and mine. Instead, Hunter had outmaneuvered me, left me with scraps while he kept everything. Keith and I fought about money constantly after that. He wanted his $15,000 back and expected me to cover it from my settlement. When I explained that $45,000 had to cover my lawyer fees, security deposits, and starting over, he got angry. You said there would be enough for both of us to start fresh. He accused, you said Hunter was just a boring contractor who wouldn't see this coming. I didn't know he'd transfer the money, but you knew he suspected something. Didn't you? You had to know. The truth was, I'd been so focused on my own plans that I hadn't paid attention to Hunter's behavior. I'd assumed his calmness meant obliviousness, when really it had meant preparation. While I was falling in love and making plans for the future, he was protecting his assets and documenting everything. Keith and I broke up 3 weeks after the mediation. He'd started looking at me differently, like he was seeing me clearly for the first time. The passionate, understanding man I'd fallen for became cold and calculating when money was involved, just like me. I suppose you used me to get to Hunter, he said during our final fight. You never loved me. You loved what you thought I could help you get. I wanted to deny it, but the words stuck in my throat. Had I loved Keith? Or had I loved the idea of him? The excitement of someone new, someone who saw me differently than Hunter did? Or had I just loved the validation, the feeling of being desired and pursued? The divorce was finalized 4 months after I'd filed. I got my $45,000, minus legal fees, minus the money Keith had demanded back, minus deposits and moving expenses. By the time I was settled in my new apartment, I had maybe $20,000 left. Hunter kept the house, his business, everything else. The inheritance money stayed with his mother, who apparently bought herself a new car and took a cruise. Money that could have been mine. Should have been mine. Being spent by an old woman who'd done nothing to earn it except raise the son who'd outsmarted me. I tried dating again. But it was hard to find someone who measured up to what Keith and I had shared. The men I met through dating apps were either looking for casual hookups or seemed more interested in what I could offer them financially. When I mentioned being recently divorced, they'd ask about settlements and alimony. When I explained my financial situation, they'd lose interest quickly. Meanwhile, Keith started dating someone new within a few months, a woman who owned her own catering business, someone with her own money and her own life. They looked happy together in the photos I'd see on social media, before I finally blocked him everywhere. Hunter renovated the house, expanded his business, seemed to be thriving. Sometimes I'd drive by the old neighborhood, see his truck in the driveway of what used to be our home, and feel a stab of something. Regret. Maybe, or anger. That could have been my life, my security, my future. Instead, I was starting over at 45 with nothing but a small apartment and a job I'd taken just to pay the bills. The worst part was the loneliness. Not just being alone, but being truly seen for who I was and found wanting. Keith had loved me when he thought I came with a financial bonus. Hunter had tolerated me when he thought I was committed to our marriage. But when the money disappeared and the deception was revealed, both of them walked away without looking back. A year later, I'm still in the same apartment, still working the same job, still trying to figure out how everything went so wrong. I see other divorced women who seem to land on their feet, who find new relationships and new happiness, but they probably didn't blow up their marriages for their husband's brothers. They probably didn't spend months planning an exit strategy that backfired so spectacularly. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if I'd been honest with Hunter about feeling disconnected. If I'd suggested counseling or tried to work on our marriage instead of looking for an escape route. But then I remember how he dismissed my ideas, how he took me for granted, how he never really saw me the way Keith did. At least for a few months, I felt truly alive and desired and valued. The inheritance money is gone, invested in scholarships and trusts, and whatever else Hunter's mother decided to do with it. Keith has moved on with someone who apparently appreciates him without expecting him to fund her lifestyle. And Hunter has built the life he wanted, the life I could have shared if I'd been satisfied with steady and reliable instead of always wanting more. I'm not the villain in this story, no matter how it looks from the outside. I was a woman who felt trapped and found someone who made her feel alive again. The fact that it happened to be my husband's brother was unfortunate, but it wasn't malicious. The fact that money was involved was practical. I needed security to leave my marriage. And that inheritance represented freedom. Hunter may have won this round, but he's still the same predictable, unimaginative man he always was. Keith may have his new girlfriend, but he showed his true colors when money got tight. And I'm still here, still standing, still ready for whatever comes next. Maybe I didn't get the ending I planned, but at least I tried for something better than settling for mediocre. That has to count for something.